Hi, I'm Alfonso Muchacho, and today we're going to go for something a little bit different. I want to talk about a few beginner's mistakes that you should be able to easily avoid and evolve from as you become a more accomplished producer. A lot of these I've been guilty of doing myself, so I speak from experience when I say that if you leave these behind, you'll quickly find yourself producing more polished music. Now, these aren't your arbitrary beginner's mistake that you'll find lists of everywhere. They're more traits that a lot of beginners have that you need to shake off before you can progress further. I guess we could sum most of them up as arbitrarily following rules without thinking them through, thinking of the reasons behind them. Right, let's dive in and run through a few examples. The first one that I blindly followed for a long time, and that was many years, was cutting the low end for no reason. I'm sure somewhere, probably in the first ever YouTube tutorial ever uploaded, someone said that you need to cut all the bass frequencies below a certain level, whether that was 20 hertz or 30 hertz, something like that. Either way, someone has said that because we cannot hear these frequencies, or rather they can't be produced on the vast majority of home systems. There's no point in having them eat up energy in the mix. And since then, every tutorial video has repeated this advice without really looking into the details. To immediately contradict myself, there is sense in this. You don't want a huge amount of sub-frequencies eating up all the energy in your mix, but this is basic mixing 101. The same way you don't want massive spikes at 35 hertz, you don't want massive spikes at 1 kilohertz either, so we don't blindly cut at 1K, that wouldn't make sense. What we really should be aiming for is a balanced mix, and even if your monitors can't accurately produce sub-frequencies, you can at least use an analyzer to check you're not getting all these frequencies out of hand. I found that I was slapping a steep high-pass filter on every track, and this was causing all sorts of phase issues. Every time you EQ your track, you're potentially causing more phase problems. That's the nature of EQs. Even when I was using a linear phase EQ or an EQ specifically designed for cutting low frequencies, I was hearing problems with the phasing on my kick drums. I could kind of hear the click of the kick come in before the main body of the kick, sort of like a double kick drum. So Muchacho's top tip number 1, don't cut your sub-frequencies across a whole track. Get your bass levels right in the first place and leave any drastic EQ adjustments that affect your whole track to a mastering engineer who knows what they're doing. Staying with bass lines for tip number 2, not every bass line has to be in mono. This is another one I was guilty of repeating on every track. Literally every bass line I created was dead center, no delay, no reverb, nothing. And guess what? My bass lines were really boring. I remember listening to tracks I liked and trying to replicate these lovely full, warm, round bass sounds that I was hearing, but I couldn't even get close. Then it occurred to me that what I was hearing was chorus. So take a listen to the difference between a completely dry mono bass line and then what it sounds like when I add chorus to it. Focus on the width. It's subtle but very noticeable on a good system or a good set of headphones. The same can be said of using reverb and delay. Just listen to how much a difference a small amount can make. EQ carefully on a send. Once you start getting out of the mindset that something has to always be like something, you'll open up a whole new world of creativity. Go and break some rules. Number 3, and for me this is probably the most important one, stop layering more and more sounds on top of each other. Most of the best electronic tracks ever made are incredibly simple. Really take some time to listen to some great tracks and count how many different elements are playing at the same time. It'll be a lot lower than you think. And where the track count is high, it's likely to be small percussive elements, not huge melodies playing over the top of each other. There was a point where I was regularly exceeding 50 or 60 as a track count. I think I even got up to 70 once, and I really thought this was the way to go. I equated adding more elements with adding more effort. The reality is I should have been spending more effort getting the sounds right in the first place. I think because I didn't have much confidence in the sounds I was using, I tended to bury them under other sounds. I thought this was making my music sound more complex, but really it just ended up sounding like a jumbled mess. High track counts are fine if you're creating a film score, but in dance floor friendly music it's just too much. The basis for most tracks is a short loop, and then we build that out to form a track over 5 or 10 minutes. If you're over this time you're getting bored and you're finding your track is sounding boring, don't fall into the trap of continuously adding unnecessary melodies to keep it interesting. Instead, get creative with your arrangement, study other tracks and pay attention to the automation and become a master of using effects. This leads me on to number 4, stop being lazy with effects. You can't get away with just dropping random sounds over your track to fill in gaps and generate interest. Dropping a whoosh followed by some sort of cymbal crash and then some sound effect afterwards will not make your production sound like a polished piece of music. This is really an area where effort pays off. The more you put in, the more you will get out. As I've mentioned in a previous video, to get effects to blend in and sit well with your track, you're almost always better off using existing sounds from your track, run through some effects and then blended back in. This is A, more fun, and B, just sounds better than adding more and more different noises. Take a listen as I experiment with sending different sounds to different effect returns. "17 times at least more fun than dropping a laser onto your track." Okay, we're up to number 5, and you need to up your percussion game. I can bet when you first sat down to make a track, the very first time you opened whatever DAW you bought, not stole, bought, you didn't think, hey, I've got a great idea for a track. It's going to have this really cool shaker pattern, and I'm going to use a bongo running through a delay to create this cool rhythm. I know you didn't think that. You thought the same as me. And all you were thinking about was melodies and bass line, big strings and gorgeous breakdowns. The truth is, most of us didn't start making music to create interesting hi-hat patterns and all that kind of stuff. When you're a beginner, you probably neglected them. So here is the typical beginner's attempt at some percussion. We've all done this. Take a listen. So this is the number 1 giveaway that lets me know if a beginner has made a track. It stands out a mile when you know what you're listening for, and it's static percussion. So there's nothing wrong whatsoever with what I just made. In theory, at least, it's well mixed and properly EQ'd. Nothing sticks out as being odd, but it just sounds biblically dull. Sometimes I would get people sending me demos of their tracks, just looking for feedback, and without really knowing what it was, I knew something sounded very amateurish about it. I knew it wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on what the problem was. Then I realised it was their percussion. It just never changed and evolved. Now take a listen to that very same loop, but with a bit of movement added. So it sounds the same, but at the same time, it's completely different. It's all these little details that add up, and on their own, they're not that noticeable, but they probably won't make a difference to a finished track, but add them all together and they make a massive contribution to your sound. Producers are always looking for that final 5 or 10%, and the truth is it's not some magic compressor or a magic EQ. It's effort. I'm going to leave with a bonus tip right now. Don't update anything, ever. I've probably spent more time wrestling with settings and plugin authorizations after updating to the latest version, or if I'm being really stupid, upgrading my operating system. Now, I haven't changed my operating system for maybe 6 years, and that's the 6 years I've had my computer, and I won't until I buy a new computer. It never crashes. I don't need any updates. It just works as it is. I recently upgraded to Live 10.1. And I really waited until all the bugs were ironed out from Live 10 before making the jump. And it still took a while to get everything the way I want it. And honestly, I probably load Live 9 when I need to do something quickly. So save yourself the hassle. If it's not broke, don't fix it.